All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the 2024 tight end re-ranking video after the NFL draft. Dalton Kincaid, he survives. He's about basically the only guy that actually survived out of this whole thing and moves on to be in his own special tier of all the tight ends that are out there. I'll break down some of the other stuff, the stuff that I'm going to be looking forward going into mini camp and then training camp heading into the season. All that good stuff that I'd be looking at right now. Brock Wright, I'm going to talk about him. He's basically the blocking tight end for the Lions. So he, this offseason, restricted free agent, 49ers offered him a 3-year, $12 million contract. The Lions came back. They matched that. He stays a Lion. Why does this matter? Well, you see Josh Oliver, he's the blocking tight end for the Vikings. It's a $7 million a year contract. So when we start talking about the value of these positions, how the teams look at them, Travis Kelce, 17 and change, 17.125 as the top tight end in the league, all the way down here to a top end blocking tight end in Josh Oliver. That's how I would view these guys. We'll get into that. Athletic measurables, third year breakout, second year contract. We primarily are looking at the number one in an offense. That's a unicorn. That doesn't happen very often. The number two in an offense is going to be fantasy relevant. And then sometimes on high volume passing offenses, we can get the number three guy to be valuable. We have some very interesting number four guys that we're going to be talking about a little bit today. We'll get into them a little bit later. So 2019, this is like one of the years that we thought we were going to actually get like more than one fantasy relevant tight end to break things up instead of just like throwing darts at like basically Travis Kelce, or it was Gronk and Jimmy Graham before that. I don't remember the Broncos tight end off the top of my head. But anyway, you're looking at like Kelce, Kittle, Waller, Ertz, Mark Andrews, and we're like, we got five guys now. Like now we can start really looking at the position differently. And then that dream went away really quick, partially because of injuries and other stuff that was going on. So 2020, Kelce, he stays a unicorn. Darren Waller, okay, we got Darren Waller. Remember, George Kittle and Mark Andrews have had injury problems in their career. 2021 rolls around. You're looking at that legendary season by Mark Andrews. I'm going to move my mic. And then Travis Kelce, Dalton Schultz wins leagues in this year. I know because I had Dalton Schultz at the end of my year. And then George Kittle, he sticks around with a little bit of injuries that are going on. 2022, we have a return of that legendary season by Travis Kelce. This TJ Hawkinson season was kind of ugly, 12.7 points. This is full PPR. We'll talk about the difference in scoring. George Kittle comes back. Mark Andrews, inconsistency of the offense. You're also looking at the injury problems. So now the position, it ends up just being that one major tier of Travis Kelce and then everybody else that we can start depreciating. And then last year, obviously, Sam LaPorta, he's the tight end one. He's the league winner because he was basically going undrafted. But we have this big problem again where now we're going to start smashing together the value of all the position or the position in general, which means the scoring output, because guys are not doing legendary seasons. They're not doing elite seasons. They're not doing sub-elite seasons. They're not basically wide receivers at the tight end position. They're just tight ends. So the whole position right now, the meta looks like punt the position. And I can bring this up when we look at fantasy pros, because if I'm going to be pulling the trigger on the number one tight end on fantasy pros, Sam LaPorta, pick 25 overall. So you're looking at somewhere between a second and a third round pick to get the number one tight end, where statistically speaking, I can get the same production from pulling the trigger on Jake Ferguson at tight end 10. The same basic risk reward for Jake Ferguson is there for Sam LaPorta. And we'll talk about this here right now, and I'll bring this up. So the big outlier with Sam LaPorta that I brought out, yeah, he was a league winner. Yeah, he's really good. That's not what we're talking about. These 10 touchdowns relative to the next tier of guys that are doing 6 to 5. Those touchdowns may or may not be something that we can predict this year. It's something chasing touchdowns is a good idea from winning a league standpoint. The same process will win me a league, will lose me a league. But in this case, those 10 tight ends are chasing touchdowns is usually kind of a bad idea. I'm going to put the over underline on Sam LaPorta being like 1,000 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. That's basically going to be like all these tight ends are going to be around the same area of 1,000 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. That does not bode well from overspending on the position. It bodes well on just kicking the can until the latest possible chance I get to pull the trigger on a guy. And that's going to include my Dalton Schultz or my Dalton Kincaid shares at tight end 6, on Fantasy Pros, 76 overall. Probably has the most upside at the value of the capital that I'm going to put into him. Yeah, still could break my heart. Also could win me a league. That's why he's going to be where he is in my rankings. Where I would pull the trigger on him. 76 easy smash. I'd probably jump up to 66 overall. So in your 12-man league, you're looking at like a 7th-round draft pick, and your 10-round leagues, you're looking at like a 7th-round draft pick, about the same area. So let's say moving forward. So it's not just the tight ends that we want to be looking at in the draft, like wide receivers. Again, this is another target, another mouth to feed, competition for opportunity. That's not what we like. New quarterbacks coming in will tend to be a good thing for tight ends. Again, especially some of your rookies, they will tend to lean on their security blankets. I don't care about talent. What I do care about is taking advantage of a variable. I don't like variables. They're bad. They're unknown things I don't like in fantasy unless I can tell the story about how they're good. So some of these quarterbacks are going to rookie quarterbacks are going to upgrade tight ends. But then again, bringing in a wide receiver is going to downgrade the guy for the most part. And then we're going to talk about some of these rookies later, because the only ones that I really see potentially being fantasy relevant this year are Brock Bowers and Ben Sano. Maybe Sanders. We're going to talk about him. He's just outside of draftability. This is in redraft. Some of these other guys are going to have a little bit more value in dynasty. And I'll talk about them all today. So I already talked about Dalton Kincaid. He's going to be paired with Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox has this massive 4-year, $52 million contract that he signed with the Bills a few years back, but they renegotiated, they reworked it, and then at the end of the year, after all the shenanigans, he was down to 47% snaps. So again, they only went out and they got Keon Coleman in the 2nd round of the draft to basically replace the loss of Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. So maybe Khalil Shakur is the number 1 in the offense. I don't think Keon Coleman, and I can bring him up. That's why I have things like this pulled up. I don't think Keon Coleman is going to be the guy. He's a big X. He's not particularly fast. This 4.6 in the 40 at the combine. I think he ran a 4.5 at his pro day. Those don't bother me as much as the inability to separate. So if he becomes more of a contested catch guy, he's going to have the overall ceiling limited. And now you're looking at, let me see if I can pull this up, because we can just go Gabe Davis right here. If I can go get him on the Jaguars. And we can talk about Gabe Davis. Like if as a rookie, you're getting that 1-to-1 replacement, you're looking at about like 836 to 746 yards and 7 touchdowns. The touchdowns probably bother me more than the actual yardage. Limited overall targets, Gabe Davis, 81, 93, somewhere around that range. That's what I'm going to guess is going to go on with Keon Coleman going to the Bills. So again, I'm a little bit more concerned that Khalil Shakur is going to be the number 1 in that offense than I am the rookie. And that still keeps me on pace for Dalton Kincaid to lead all tight ends in opportunities. And that's like the biggest thing that I would be looking at overall is, if I can pull up the right one, the scoring, that's what I'd be looking at the most, is trying to capture the targets. And, after that, like I can worry about other things. Maybe Keon Coleman's going to be the red zone threat. That's going to cap the overall ceiling of Dalton Kincaid to be closer to maybe 900 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. I could definitely see that happening, but that's still going to be relatively in line with Sam LaPorta, and I'm going to be paying a lot less capital to find out. All right. So moving on to the next tier of guys, these are going to be guys that are sub-elite. These are the guys that theoretically could be the number 1 in their offenses. Right now, I'm going to have Mark Andrews as the number 2 tight end. Fantasy Pros, if I can go hunt him down, being thoroughly prepared again. Right now, Travis Kelce's the number 2, 33 overall. So like 3rd or 4th round draft pick. That's where I would maybe look at spending, pulling the trigger on your Mark Andrews shares. Probably slightly better value if I can hunt him down. Tight end 3, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews. I like the value of Mark Andrews more. To go get a Mark Andrews, I would probably be looking at spending like about pick 45. So 4th round pick in a 12-man league, 5th round pick in a 10-man league, something along those lines. I think that's good return on investment for him. There is some question marks about Mark Andrews, the overall consistency of the offense. You do have Isaiah Likely. The chances that Mark Andrews can stay healthy, you see last year only played 10 games, 15 in 2022, 14 in 2020, and then another 15. So he missed a game or two in 2019. So that's what I'd be looking at with him overall. Still theoretically could lead the offense. The other thing in this case, when we look at Mark Andrews, is that the Ravens went out and they drafted Tez Walker, the wide receiver out of North Carolina, in the 4th. I don't think that hurts Mark Andrews as much as I think that hurts the potential breakout of Zay Flowers. And if Zay Flowers doesn't eat into Mark Andrews is the number one. He's still a very solid pick. Trey McBride, obviously the biggest downside to Trey McBride right now is they went out and they drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., 4 overall in the draft. That would be what bothers me the most. I did consider moving Trey McBride to just tight end 2 in a different tier, but ultimately that competition for targets, I'm going to put my money on Mark Andrews before I put my money on Trey McBride at this point. Overall, I think it's a really good situation. The only problem is right now, I think he's going to be overvalued compared to certain other guys. I think that we just looked at tight end 2, tight end 3. Like I said, I think that's about where he should go as tight end 3. Maybe a little bit rough. If I want to go get him, I'm probably going to be looking at spending a 4th round pick. And at that point, I'm definitely going to be looking at Dalton Kincaid because I think there's less, competition for opportunity there. Travis Kelce falls all the way down. So the Rashid Rice pending suspension probably helps him. Being 35 probably hurts him. The Xavier Worthy pickup probably helps him. It's going to keep coverage off of him. He's attached to Patrick Mahomes. The big problem that I would have with my Travis Kelce shares at this point is I'm not expecting that he's going to have this elite tier type of guy that we've been used to with Travis Kelce. I'm going to imagine he's going to be just in this slog of, what he did last year. And he did finish overall as, points per game, tied with TJ Hawkinson over Sam LaPorta. So that's something to be paying attention to. But again, the over underline on Travis Kelce, I think is going to be about 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, the same as most other guys. With obviously baking in the fact that like Father Time is undefeated. Sam LaPorta is going to drop all the way down to tight end 5. And again, not a knock on talent. I think he's really good at football. Not necessarily the best situation in the world. And then what he did last year to be the tight end 1 was not this unicorn outlier legendary season. It was kind of an anomaly where everybody was down and he just happened to score more touchdowns. I was listening to the Underdog guys the other day on this one, and one of the dudes was like, "Hey, he outscored the scoring model, so now you're definitely looking at the possibility of that negative regression towards the mean from the touchdown perspective." So yeah, I probably would not be spending on him. I would be expecting that you're going to get that jump forward in potentially opportunities. I don't know if the touchdowns are going to go with it. Even if he stays at 10 touchdowns and he gets a marginal increase in receiving yards, let's say like 1,100 yards, there's still the possibility that someone like a Dalton Kincaid could have that unicorn type year. And I'll bring this up when we look at like a Travis Kelce. There's still the possibility that someone else is going to have this like legendary type season. Travis Kelce's 2022. I could see Dalton Kincaid being the number 1 in his offense, doing 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, even though you get that statistical jump from Sam LaPorta. So you're kind of drafting. I would be drafting the safety of saying I took tight end 1 last year, this year, and I don't necessarily like doing that. Kyle Pitts is going to be here at tight end. Tight end 6 overall. Again, could theoretically be the number 1 in this offense. We're expecting Kirk Cousins to take a big step forward. They didn't bring anybody in. I'm going to imagine Drake London's going to be the huge competition for Kyle Pitts overall in the passing game. Still expecting that the athletic measurables will move forward. They did come out and say that like he was more injured from the 2022 campaign and this campaign. I'm really interested in Kyle Pitts. I do like it. Unfortunately, when I'm looking at value, and hopefully I pull up the right one, if I'm going to be pulling the trigger on tight end 6 Dalton Kincaid, that would be and I have my choice between theoretically the number 1 in an offense in Dalton Kincaid and theoretically the number 2 in an offense in Kyle Pitts, and they're going to basically cost me about the same capital. I'm probably going to go with Dalton Kincaid over Kyle Pitts, and I'm going to overdraft Dalton Kincaid slightly over trying to overdraft Kyle Pitts. I really like Kyle Pitts' value. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that you're probably buying a cap again, 1,000 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. That's probably what I'd be looking at with Kyle Pitts. And I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be capped out relatively that. So David Njoku falls all the way down to tight end 7. And again, I like him the best in this offense. I'm getting more and more bullish, or bearish, I should say, on Deshaun Watson. That's why I'm going to keep moving some of these Browns down. I think he's got the best chance. Remember, second-year contract tight ends are very good indicators of breakouts. He's already broken out. He also has good athletic measurables. He's one of the theoretically better unicorns in the league. And again, to get tight end 6 or tight end 7, and you're paying tight end 7 prices, yeah, it's pretty easy. Evan Ingram moves down from tight end 3 all the way down to tight end 7, or 8, I should say. And the reason why I would move Evan Ingram all the way down to 8 is the first round draft pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars being Brian Thomas Jr. That's why I would just move him down. I'm expecting Brian Thomas Jr. to eventually be special. And the way that they were using Evan Ingram is a little bit, if I can pull him up, a little bit difficult. He was more of a gadget dump off guy at the beginning of the season. By the end of the season, because of some of the stuff that was going on, they were kind of using him more on those quote unquote big boy routes. The release of Zay Jones does theoretically help him. Again, I'm more worried about the Brian Thomas Jr. selection, and they also brought in Gabe Davis. I do think that they still have like Parker Washington. They still have Christian Kirk. Trying to figure out how this offense is going to parse out. Yeah, I could see him falling all the way back to like number 5 in the offense, with ETN being the number 4. That scares me a little bit. Before the draft, I could definitely see him sticking and being closer to this 143 ridiculous targets that he had last year. After the draft, I could definitely see the second half of the season being all Brian Thomas Jr. And I do have Brian Thomas Jr. as my like wide receiver, like 28 or something like that, to go along with this move. George Kittle is going to be, tight end 9. Again, the biggest thing, he's going to be a little bit older. A lot of mouths to feed in the offense. You're buying safety with George Kittle. He's probably going to give you top 10 season if he stays healthy. I don't think there's a lot to this. I just think the road for him having a legendary season is going to get harder and harder with the age and all those mouths to feed in that offense. Jake Ferguson, I really like Jake Ferguson. Again, he did finish as tight end 8 last year. Now we're looking at that third year. That we like third year breakouts. We do. Not the greatest athletic measurables in the world, but the Cowboys, and I can bring this up, the Cowboys did not go out, I think this, and bring in anybody in the draft that is really worth talking about. I don't think they brought in anybody. And that bothers me from the perspective of the overall offense. It doesn't bother me from the individual player of Jake Ferguson. So they brought in an offensive guard in the 3rd, and then a wide receiver in the 6th. Nothing else to really cut into Jake Ferguson. So expecting him, I could definitely say a over underline closer to like 900 yards receiving and 7 touchdown, project to be the number 2 in a high volume passing offense. Yeah. And I'm going to have to spend tight end or pick 103 on Fantasy Pros to theoretically get very close to the production that was tight end 1 Sam LaPorta, 880 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. And Jake Ferguson, again, when we talk about Sam LaPorta's metrics saying that he's going to have that touchdown regression, Jake Ferguson's metrics are going to say he's going to go forward. He led all tight ends in red zone targets. Let's see. Pat Freiermuth, this is another one. They brought in Roman Wilson in the 3rd. I like Roman Wilson. He's a wide receiver out of Michigan. I think that the Steelers are going to be in a lot of 2 tight end sets this year with Dwayne Washington, the 2nd round pick out of Georgia. So Pat Freiermuth, he was flirting with being one of those special tier guys. And then the Steelers did the Steeler things. So I could definitely see him being the number 2 in the offense behind George Pickens. I could see him being the number 3 in the offense behind George Pickens and Roman Wilson. At the end of the day, I do think that's going to overwhelmingly cap what maybe his theoretical upside is. 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, probably still within his range of outcomes, which would put him in a lot of value as tight end. What do I have him as? 11 overall. So again, if I'm just punting the position down the line with a guy like Muth, TJ Hawkinson's 12, about what I already talked about. Dallas Goedert way too high. So he would be somewhere around this area if I'm going to go apples to apples. So again, if I'm missing Jake Ferguson, the next guy I'm going to be happy taking in about like a pick 100 to 110 would be Muth, with theoretically giving me that upside to finish with the top 10 guys overall. So I like this. I like this guy. So this is where we have the last tier of Kittle, Ferguson, and Freiermuth. This is a tier break, huge tier break at this point because now we're in speculation land. I have Ben Sinnott, the second round draft pick by the Redskins, all the way up here at tight end 12. This would probably be the last guy that I would feel comfortable rolling as my starter in the season, and this is heavily based off the measurables. Pretty good athlete, and then you're looking at that second round draft capital with Sinnott. So the second tight end off the board, attached to Jaden Daniels. Theoretically, the number one in that offense is going to be Terry McLaurin. So now we have the story that we could tell where the rookie, good draft capital, good measurables, attached to a rookie is the number two in the offense. I could definitely see throwing that dart at Sano and expecting an over underline at about 700 yards and 5 touchdowns for the 12th overall selection. Or the 12th tight end off the board. And I'm probably going to be playing like undraftable levels of capital to get that guy. And after that, I know I'm getting like there's Pat Freiermuth at tight end 16. So I would probably like Pat Freiermuth at this ADP over Sinnott in general. And I'm just curious if I can find Sinnott, how deep that he's listed. I'm not going to waste your time. But anyway, that would be the last guy that I could tell that story relative. And if I'm drafting Sinnott at tight end 12, I know that I'm in a 12-man league that I am expecting the possibility of him being a bust. There are a lot of other guys that I could throw my dart at that are probably going to go undrafted if I miss on Sinnott, but he would be the guy. The tea leaves say, hey, throw my draft pick at him. This was Noah Fant. I moved Noah Fant down one, and that's because theoretically in this offense, we can go DK, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN, attached to Geno Smith. So even though Noah Fant is now a second-year tight end with good athletic measurables, it does not necessarily mean he's going to be anything more than like the fourth overall option. And they still got guys like Jake Bobo there and Kenneth Walker III, Zach Charbonnet. He may never be anything more than just a toy instead of like a guy that's going to win me a league. He would have been the number 12 guy if it wasn't for the draft capital of Sinnott, taking over for that spot. I still think he should be draftable in all leagues. He goes from the guy that I would feel comfortable being my tight end one to start the season to a guy that I think should just be picked up as a lottery ticket. Brock Bowers all the way down here at, let me see, tight end 14 at this point. This is a little tough. I do like Brock Bowers overall, the 13th overall pick for the Raiders. They took Michael Mayer last year in the second round of the draft. I do think Brock Bowers will finish the season as the number 2 in this Raider offense. It does project to be a lower volume passing offense for Brock Bowers, which means the over underline on him is going to be much closer to, if I could bring Dalton Kincaid up, this 73 receptions, 673 yards, and 2 touchdown season that Dalton Kincaid had. Maybe I could go 4 touchdowns as the over underline on Bowers. Maybe I would go like 700 yards receiving, probably about like 65 receptions. That's what I'd be looking at with Brock Bowers at this point. I don't think he's going to cut into Devontae Adams. That would be my bigger problem. That how do I tell a story where he's the number 1 on the offense? I can't. I can tell a story where he's the number 2, even if they're in a lot of 2 tight end sets. I can do that. It becomes a better chance that someone else is going to be able to return those top 12 tight ends that we talked about, those top 11 tight ends. So, if you're splitting hairs between like Sinnott and Bowers, yeah, I can understand that. If you're splitting hairs between Bowers and Fant, yeah, I can understand that at that point. So if you want to go draft Brock Bowers as your tight end 12, that start the season that way, that's awesome. I could also see pairing Brock Bowers theoretically with your Pat Freiermuth or George Kittles or something like that, expecting that you're going to get that magical breakout. I just don't know how well he's going to be used from a fantasy perspective, even if he is a true talent from a real life football perspective. And again, I don't care about real life football. This is fantasy football. So now we have Jawan Johnston falling all the way down to or moving all the way up to tight end 15. So this one is going to be one of those ones where I was expecting the not so good New Orleans offense to do something in the draft. They brought in an offensive tackle in the first round of the draft. They brought in Spencer Rattler, the quarterback, in the fifth round of the draft. That doesn't really eat into Juwan Johnson potentially being the number 2 in this offense, and probably not a very good offense. Bub Means was the guy that they brought in the fifth. So the wide receiver from Pittsburgh is probably the closest thing to competition that they brought in for Juwan Johnson. So now we're talking about like A.T. Perry, Rashid Shaheed being the number 2 in that offense. So Juwan Johnson, again, converted wide receiver, good athletic measurables, heading into the second year of his contract. There are stuff that we could tell the breakout is going to occur. So again, he's probably one of those guys, like, I won't be drafting him at all. I'm tired of chasing Juwan Johnson, even though I have to tell everybody else, like, yeah, it could happen. So if it does happen, we're not going to be surprised about it in any way. And then to finish this, Jatavion Sanders, the rookie out of Texas. I'm not entirely impressed by him. He's not the greatest draft capital in the world. The first pick of the fourth round by the Panthers, but Bryce Young quarterback, and Bryce Young, they did go out and they get Leggett in the first round of the draft. They have old man, the ghost of Adam Thielen there, is the number 3 wide receiver. Number 2 is Deontay Johnson. This is purely opportunity based. He is a rookie with okay draft capital, moving into a good position to start the season as a starter. Just got to be a guy that we have to be put on the radar. He's one of the ones that I would say during camp, if we don't start hearing quote unquote camp hype, I would move him down. If we hear some camp hype, I would probably leave him exactly where he is. I'm not going to move him up any higher. I would expect that other guys will eat into this, but there's a theoretical outcome where he could flirt with being the number 2 in that offense in one way, shape, or form. That's why I would put him up this high, even though it is kind of not my favorite thing in the world to do, but this is just how the quote unquote process shakes itself out. So now we're looking at tight end 17, Dalton Schultz. I like the contract. I like the situation. I don't like the competition for targets. He's looking like he's going to be the number 4 there with the Houston Texans. Number 1 being Nico. Number 2 is probably Stephon Diggs. Number 3 is going to be Tank Dell. Then it's going to be Dalton Schultz. Maybe he ends up being the red zone guy, so maybe we get that spike on touchdowns. So last year, with all the injuries, Noah Brown basically being the number 3 in that offense, 635, 5 touchdowns. Maybe I would put that over underline at like 700 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's going to allow him to flirt. If I could pull this up, that's going to allow him to flirt with this range of right about here with Cole Kmet. I could definitely see that occurring. Probably not going to win a league with your Dalton Schultz shares. There's a little bit more to like with Dalton Schultz if I'm going to be drafting CJ Stroud, maybe to stack these 2 guys. If I'm going to be building my draft in such a manner that maybe I'm throwing a dart on like Sano, Fant, or Bowers as my tight end 1 to start the season, maybe I would feel pretty comfortable taking Dalton Schultz as a safe pick to go along with him, knowing that, like, yes, he's going to be attached to what we think is going to be a very good offense, even though his overall upside is going to be capped. And this is basically the same story with Cole Kmet. Have to move him down. I think, what is he at now? Tight end 18. They went out and they got the Bears took Rome Odunze with the 9th overall pick to pair him with Caleb Williams. Pull him up. So Rome right here, 9th overall pick goes to the Bears. So now we just have this massive competition for opportunities, even though it's a good offense that we maybe could project out to being like a higher volume passing offense. So again, with Cole Kmet, probably going to be capped. Again, another guy that I would say like 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's what he did last year. Not going to win you a league. That's why I would have him all the way down here. I can't tell the story where he's going to move forward. What I can tell the story is how, everybody else eats into his overall opportunity. Dallas Goedert, he's going to be all the way down here at tight end 19. So right now we're projecting Dallas Goedert to be the number 3 in this offense. Remember, Jalen Hurts has not thrown for over 4,000 yards with Dallas Goedert. What I would be looking at a little bit more is this 6th round pick that I am kind of tracking, Johnny Wilson, 6'6", 231, to be the big X, to be the red zone target. And then now, if we're taking some of the red zone work away from Dallas Goedert, we theoretically could be giving it to Johnny Wilson. Again, if Johnny Wilson, 6th-round pick, doesn't make the roster, or it doesn't look like he's going to start, or he's not going to have that role, yeah, maybe I would look at moving up Dallas Goedert. They have 592 yards, 3 touchdowns in 14 games last year. I don't know how he wins me a league. I mean, that's what I would get at. Moving Hunter Henry all the way up to tight end 20. So they go out and they get Drake May. They really upgrade the offense. They brought in offensive tackle, an offensive guard. They brought in 2 wide receivers. Hunter Henry, again, I don't think he's got the ability to finish as the tight end 1 or the tight end, the number 1 option in the offense. What I do think is somewhere between the number 2, number 3, he's got the road to do that. Has been fantasy relevant before. So again, 6 touchdowns last year, 9 in 2021. So again, over underline probably about like 600 yards receiving and another 6 touchdowns. That's what I'd be looking at. The other thing with all this, and I can pull this up, is this. It's not the right one. Got to go to tight ends. The Patriots did go out and they bring in a high athletic tight end in Jaheim Bell, the tight end out of Florida State. So that would bother me if it looks like Bell is going to make the roster. They also have Austin Hooper that the Patriots brought in. I could definitely see the overall production being capped by Hunter Henry just because of the competition within the tight end room, let alone Javon Baker and Jalen Polk that they brought in to be the number 1 and number 2 targets in that offense. But I did move him up. This tier of guys, outside of like deeper leagues or dynasty leagues, K. Dot's going to hit that 3rd year attached to the Buccaneers. Michael Mayer gets moved all the way down. Theoretically, could have had a breakout before Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is brought in there. Best case scenario, these two guys eat into each other, and we're going to talk about the Packers tight ends in a little bit. But right now, how I can see the Raiders playing out with Brock Bowers being like basically the big slot and Michael Mayer being the Y. And if they're in 2 tight end sets, it still gives the possibility because of the draft capital of Michael Mayer for him to be fantasy relevant. That's still there, even with the Brock Bowers selection. It's just a very hard story to tell with him. That's why I would keep him at wide or tight end 22. We're going to talk about these Bengals tight ends. Again, with Tyler Boyd leaving, the replacement right now is going to be Mike Gesicki. The difference between a fantasy perspective of being Tyler Boyd being a wide receiver, Mike Gesicki doing the same thing as a tight end is, tight ends can't win me or lose me a league. They can only win me a league. So you have the possibility of the tight end being attached to Joe Burrow. I like that. I do not like that the Bengals went out and they drafted Jermaine Burton, a very good prospect wide receiver out of Alabama in the 3rd. So I could definitely see him being the number 3 in this offense, like right away. And even with Gesicki, that theoretical breakout that we've been waiting on with Gesicki, if I can hunt him down, with Gesicki, and going back to these seasons with Miami where he did 700 yards, 780, only 6 touchdowns in 2020 where he finishes tight end 8. Yeah, it's still there with him, that road for him to have some fantasy value. They're going to have Yosivas, the 6th rounder from Yale, that I could definitely see moving into that like bigger slot type of role. Also, they did go out and draft 2 tight ends in the draft, Eric All from Iowa, and then Tanner McLaughlin from Arizona. I like both of these guys. Like, I've been watching a little bit more tape on Eric All. I don't think either of them are going to be like blockers in that regard. They're probably going to have more value in dynasty. But again, if Gesicki gets cut and these 2 guys move up the board, they're going to have more value, a theoretical value in having a breakout, especially in the second half of redraft. Should probably be held onto as the potential tight end attached to Joe Burrow in dynasty. Kobe Parker signed that 7-year deal, the 3-year, $22.5 million deal with the Rams. So that's why I have this pulled up right here. You can see Kobe Parker being paid around the lines of a high-end blocking number 2 tight end. Well, why does this matter from a fantasy perspective? Well, Tyler Higbee is coming off that ACL in the playoffs. We don't know when he's going to come back. Right now, Colby Parkey, because of that contract, is going to be the number 1 tight end attached to Matt Stafford in that Rams offense. Okay, long story short, maybe it's DeMarcus Robinson. Maybe Cooper Kupp takes that step back because of age. You are potentially getting a theoretical number 2 attached to this Rams offense it's a long road with Colby Parkinson, something to be paying attention to with all of this that's going on. Maybe at best he's going to be a number 3. Doesn't have the greatest athletic measurables, but he is going to be that second-year tight end, and they are paying him good money to be a number 2 tight end. And we are talking about Tyler Higbee coming off the ACL. Davis Allen was the guy who had this little bit of breakout at a certain point last year. Not good athletic measurables. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the guy who gets the job. Hunter Long is also going to be there. He's a former 3rd-round draft pick by the Dolphins that got shipped to the Rams. He could end up being the breakout with that Tyler Higbee injury late in the year. It was in the playoffs. So one of these guys could end up stealing this job, and that would be something I'm going to be listening to in camp, because I could definitely see one of these guys moving up into this tier of guys, of Jawan Johnson and Jatavion Flowers, where they have the opportunity to be fantasy relevant out the gate as the number 2 or number 3 in their offenses to start the year. This tier of guys right now, TJ Hawkinson, I would not have draftable, even though like the news that came out 2 days ago on Sleeper is going to be that he's ahead of schedule. I don't know what that means. I would still expect that there's a possibility that he could, because I guess it was a bad tear. I think it was the MCL, the ACL. He waited on the ACL or the MCL to repair itself before he got the ACL done. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into this until we definitely later on in the camp find out that he's not going to start the season on a pup. Then I would potentially move him up all the way to tight end 12 to start the year. So in this tier, guys, because TJ Hawkins is good at football, and I would bet on that down the line, especially the second half of the season. Darren Waller's another one right now. We're waiting for him to basically retire. If he doesn't retire, he would be flirting up here in this tier, guys, right about the same as I would move TJ Hawkinson. So about tight end 13. If Darren Waller decides he's going to come back, theoretically he could be the number 1 attached to Daniel Jones for whatever's that's worth. And with Neighbors being the number 1 selection for the Giants, I could definitely see that now they could take advantage of Darren Waller doing Darren Waller things. This 2-tier guys, this would be tight end. Let's see, 27, I guess at this point. So the 2 Packers tight ends, Luke Musgrave was a 2nd-round pick, good athletic measurables coming out of Oregon State. Tyler Kraft had good athletic measurables. He's the 3rd-round draft pick last year coming out of South Dakota State. He was fantasy relevant when Luke Musgrave went down with that lacerated kidney. So between these 2 guys trying to figure out who's going to be the starter, I bet it's going to be closer to like a 50-50 split with these guys. That's if they're not in 2 tight ends a lot. Unfortunately for the Packers, they have 5 wide receivers. That's why these guys are all the way down the line. So unless we could kind of figure out like injuries, some of these wide receivers getting moved, if they are in some of this time split, like they're probably not going to be fantasy relevant at all. They're just going to eat into each other. And that's without the competition from the other wide receivers. Next range of guys, Tyler Conklin, he's going to probably be right around here again, 621, 552, 3 touchdowns. Maybe with Corley, the wide receiver, the 3rd-round draft pick. Maybe I don't think Corley's necessarily a good wide receiver prospect at this point. Mike Williams, they signed him from the Chargers. He could be the number 2. There is a really ugly road where Tyler Conklin is at least starting the season as the number 2 attached to Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't like it. That's why I would put him all the way down here. Even if that all occurs, I don't know what type of upside he's going to have at this point. I don't even think he has an athletic measurable. I think I looked him up. He's like a 4.8 guy coming out of college. Jonnu Smith all the way down here. These are like way ridiculous dart throws to just talk about. Maybe he would be the number 2 in the offense. They just signed OBJ. I don't care. Chig attached to the Titans. Maybe if there's a Will Levis upgrade that would throw him into the number 3 spot for the Titans, and theoretically it could be a higher volume passing offense. This one's going to be a little interesting to hear how much farther up the board we could go with some hype trains going on, and maybe to start the season off. So I don't even necessarily think he's going to be a priority. I don't even think he's going to be a lottery ticket coming out of the draft. He would be a guy that at the very early part of the season, like week 1, I would be looking at if that offense breaks the way that it theoretically could. So we got 2 Broncos tight ends, and this is going to be all the way down here. Like I don't care land. So 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, tight end 31. Dolchich, like big slot coming out of UCLA. He was injured most of last year. Remember, they brought in Bo Nix. Adam Troutman resigns with them. Yeah, I don't see. Maybe Dolchich could flirt with being somewhere around the line of like a low end tight end one if everything breaks the right way. Somewhat open opportunities going on with Broncos right now. Like they didn't really go out and wow me. I think they went out and they drafted Franklin. Where's he at? Troy Franklin in the 4th round. So that would be like maybe the guy. Like they still have a lot of mouths to feed there with Mims and Sutton and Tim Patrick. Like it's a long road for any of these guys to really be fantasy relevant. Let's see, moving on. So the Chargers, this is a little bit more interesting with the Chargers. So Hayden Hurst, he did sign, let me see, I have this written down. His contract is 2 years, $2.5 million going to the Chargers. So he did flirt, former first round draft pick, not necessarily greatest athletic measurables. This year in Atlanta did look like he may have something, 6 touchdowns, 88 targets, really inconsistent year. And then the last year there was a possibility he was going to have that breakout attached to Bryce Young, and that just went away really early in the season. I don't think this is the guy. Will Disley coming in from the Seattle Seahawks. Again, he signed a 3-year, $14 million contract with the Chargers. So again, we can look at prices of where Will Disney's gonna slot in there, and that would be like somewhere in this area. So tight end 28 overall, they're not looking like they're paying him. So again, right now, like Josh Palmer, they brought in Lad McConkey, who I have as wide receiver 9 right now. And then you're going to have Quentin Johnston, DJ Shark. They brought in some like low value rookies like Brendan Rice from USC. So the guys that may have a little bit more value would be Donald Parham. He has flirted with being a little bit fantasy relevant. You can see like last year with all the nonsense going on, 285 yards, 4 touchdowns. So again, 2nd-year type breakouts, like older guys with good athletic measurables. He might be the guy. Stone Smart, he's a converted quarterback. I don't think he's going to be the guy out of this group. Maybe Donald Parham's going to have some sneaky appeal down the line. This offense is going to be really hard to predict overall. Then we're going to have finally like the Colts. So you're going to like look at like Kyle Granson, 3rd-year guy or 4th-year guy coming out of SMU. He's like a 4.6 guy, good athletic measurables. Maybe we're in the range of a breakout. He was the main guy that was getting the most run at certain points on the year. You're going to have like Drew Ogletree, who at certain points I was tracking. He's another 4.6 guy as potentially leading the tight ends in snaps. So again, with the Colts, they brought in Adonis Mitchell. So you're looking at Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, Adonis Mitchell. Maybe like this is a really hard road to get a tight end relevant in what would project to be a fast, but probably not necessarily like high volume passing offense. The guy that would be interesting is Will Mallory. He's like a 6th round or 5th round draft pick out of Miami. He's a 4.5 40 guy. So this would be the guy I would be listening to in camp if he can slowly eat into this. And he had a couple fantasy relevant weeks with this relatively low snap share. Week 14, 5 for 5 for 46. Week 16, 4 for 4 for 47. So when he was given a little bit of opportunity, that would be the guy that I think would maybe be the most interesting. Mo Alley Cox, he's old. These are like converted. He's a converted basketball player. And then Jelani Woods, he's a 3rd round draft pick. So again, he's a 4.6 guy. Third year breakout. Maybe he was injured last year, I think with a hamstring. So like there is a little bit to be monitoring with these Colts tight ends if some guys get cut, and then we can start understanding how this usage is going to shake out. But that would be why they're all the way down here at my tight end 30s. Like this is 33. I actually have Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers as 2 guys that have already earned their independent ranking out of this bunch. But yeah, right now I am tracking Dalton Kincaid to be the unicorn. Everybody else is out there. The meta looks like it's going to compress all the value of the tight ends. So I probably would not be pulling the trigger on the top end guys, and I would probably be depressing the value of the other guys in this tier. Dalton Kincaid, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and then this tier, Jake Ferguson's going to have good value. Brock Bowers, maybe. and then we could talk about some of the other guys. So like those would be the main guys I would be looking at: Kincaid, Pitts, Ferguson at their values. And then, if you like the talent, Brock Bowers, probably just as good as anybody else at this point. So yeah, that's going to be my tight end re-rankings. And I'll have to think about what I'm going to do next week, starting to break this stuff down a little bit more, getting ready for camp.